this workshop series on getting started as a social entrepreneur. And today is the 10th of November, 2021. Just a brief on yesterday. Yesterday, we had participated in the workshop on problem solving and ideation, where we had Dr. Ronald Yesudas, who spoke to us and drove home the essential understanding of how social entrepreneurs address a social issue, focusing on the processes of generating ideas that emerge from everyday life as we respond to social issues. And he cited a very few prominent examples, I think, which most of us are also quite familiar with, like, for example, Jeru Bilimoria, who started Childline India. So Karen, you will be knowing, I'm sure, Jeru. Then also Kailash Satyarthi, from the who started Good Weave International, and took on the great lobby of the child labor through his project. And also, Sir shared some interesting aspects of social entrepreneurs from some TIS projects. So that was a good kind of insights which the students had into a very basic understanding of what is social entrepreneurship and social entrepreneurship. So students have just been getting introduced to the concept, or rather just to the idea of how it has to what is entrepreneurship and social entrepreneurship. In today's workshop, we have dear students, we have a very well-renowned social entrepreneur, Miss Karen Shaiva, the Chief Impact Officer of IDOBRA and the Managing Trustee of Rise Infinity Foundation, both which are organizations which she has founded and been part of the journey. And I'm sure she will throw much more insight into this. She's here today to converse with us and to present to us from her heart, if I may say, to motivate us and to prod us on, as the title of today's workshop says, Antaha, Prerna, literally meaning self-motivation, through her sharing on her life journey as a social entrepreneur. In fact, on her interview, which I read through, was on CEO Insight. She said, with regard to really motivating students, I like this quote, so I'm going to quote you, Karen. Never give up. Every adversity you face, you become not only stronger, but more innovative in creating solutions with the least amount of resources within maximum constraints. Entrepreneurship is difficult, but an extremely satisfying journey. I'm sure you have much more valuable insights to share it through as you go. Actually, I have been really recently introduced to Karen, I must confess, because but I known her to be a very inspiring and active member of the group called Women in Entrepreneurship, which is authored by Dr. Prerna Rao from IITB. In fact, we are all part of that group. And on this group, there are many inspiring women who have been sharing about their initiative and loads of information. So I won't go much into sharing about Karen, as we all are waiting to listen to her and her journey. And in fact, just yesterday, so much I have to share about Karen. Just yesterday, I was listening to a podcast of hers entitled Sharing Life's Lessons, where she was interviewed by Hamida. And again, there are so many pearls of wisdom, or rather insights, as I was listening to her, the various twists and turns in life that led her to the juncture of becoming a social entrepreneur. What I really got to understand was a strong foundation and values which she upholds, and how the social sector actually supports the corporate sector and not the other way around. That was my take home, Karen, that I just wanted to share with the students. And now I should not speak any further, Karen. I think I just hand over the mic to you. Karen, speak to our young budding social entrepreneurs as you understand and what it is to be a social entrepreneur. What has been your social journey as a social entrepreneur? What has been the challenges? How did you overcome it? What are some of your words of advice, suggestions? Motivate our young minds to take it on, and if I may say, reach for the stars. Yeah, so over to you, Karen. Yeah, waiting to listen to you. Yeah.
Okay. Great. Thank you so much, Cletus. Just give me one second.
Yes.
Okay. So, thank you firstly very much for not only giving an introduction, but also obviously, reading out from some of the things that you read about me as well as what you heard about me. So thank you for already laying that foundation. I must firstly apologize. I had not planned to take this call on my phone. As you can see, I am traveling, and so there was an emergency government meeting that I had to go for, and so I had no choice but to take the call on my missing. Luckily, I could switch the timing so that what you call it, I could make it because I was so worried that I would have to cancel, and I would be very disappointed because I think one of the things that are really close to my heart are social entrepreneurs, but even more than social entrepreneurs are youth or youngsters who are looking to be socially active. So I think for me this was a double gift, and really I would never have wanted to miss that opportunity. Thank you. So very quickly, first and foremost, I must tell you, and I think Professor Cletus would have seen this in my podcast. I just love doing things differently, right? Especially when people expect you to do something, I want to do just the different opposite thing to that, right? So I think all of you are expecting and waiting to hear about my journey, correct? Am I right or wrong? So you can
Yes,
all put it
yes,
in the
Yes,
chat
ma'am.
box. You can do reactions because I will find it very boring if I'm gonna have this one-way conversation. Okay. So may I please request all of y'all to be hyperactive, not just active, but hyperactive on the chat because like Professor Cletus spoke about constraints, right? So the virtual world right now, many people feel it's a constraint. Well, I don't, right? Because the minute there's a constraint, you become creative, correct? And so, what is our creativity over here? Number one, I can talk to you right now. If I had to come to your college to talk to you all, do you think I would have been able to make it? No, right? I would have definitely not been able to make it. Also, what you call it, would I be able to really talk to all of you simultaneously? No, because in the physical world you can only talk to one person, but because we're using technology, I actually have a channel by which all of you can talk to me, and I have a chance to look at what are those remarks and ignite. So this is perhaps lesson number one: leverage every opportunity, even if it at first seems to be a constraint. Turn it around to use it to your advantage. Yeah. So, lesson number one. Now, yeah. So, how many of you all actually put something down in the chat box? Did you all or not? Okay. I
yes,
hope.
they will be able to.
Good, good. I'm glad, and I hope to see more of that happening. So, so as I said, I love to do things differently. So, instead of me telling you about my journey, as Professor Cletus said, there are many of my interviews and videos and podcasts, etc., out there. So, I'm sure you'll get many opportunities to look me up. I'm also on all the social media with the very same name, Keron Shaiva, always, right? So, therefore, more than talking about my journey, I'm not saying I'll not talk about my journey, I will, but I'm going to do it differently rather than just talk about it continuously. I want to do it as part of an interactive session with all of you, right? Because two reasons. As I said, one is I like to do things differently, but I'm interested in you all. I want to know why are you all planning to be social entrepreneurs? And if I can do even one small bit of either motivating you, helping you, encouraging you, whatever I can possibly do, I'm not going to let this opportunity go by, isn't it? Because lesson number two is when positive opportunities come, you grab it with both your hands. You don't wait for a constraint to happen, right? So I'm going to talk about my journey, as I said, as we kind of keep discussing. So I'm going to ask you a question first, okay? What is the difference? And of course, you anybody can just either put your hand up if there are multiple people. If not, you can just unmute yourself and answer the question, okay? So what is the difference? And I believe yesterday you all had some more conversations about this, so I'm sure this should be easy. What is the difference between a social worker, a social entrepreneur, and a social activist? How is that for a question? कौन बनेगा करोड़पति? Anybody? Come on. Lesson number one of entrepreneurship: constraint, turn it to your opportunity. Let's see it working in action. Oh my goodness, Cletus, are they feeling shy or are they scared
No,
or what is?
no, no. Actually, they are quite. Yesterday, they were talking so much. Hi, students.
Hello.
Please relax and start talking. Yeah.
Cletus, the third one is activist, social activist,
Yes,
entrepreneur
yes.
and a social activist.
So it is volunteering, a worker. I'm sorry, worker. Okay, how many of you here, okay, um, have volunteered? Let me ask that. How many of you have volunteered at any point in time in your life?
I have.
Okay, great. So when you volunteered, what did you do?
Um, I had volunteered like in a blood donation camp at my college. So I worked out with the logistics, like how things are to be set up, and then how awareness campaign has to be done. So these things I did.
Awesome, awesome. Very nice, very nice. First and foremost, I want everybody to please give Prachi, right? Yeah, Prachi, a round of applause because anyone who takes initiative must be recognized. So, can we give her a round of applause, please? Come on. And a reaction. Yeah, great. So, I'm going to do that. So, Prachi, tell me now, you did a great thing by obviously, volunteering for this blood camp. Okay. Now, did you face any problems, challenges, issues while you were doing that?
Ma'am, my name is Shagusta.
Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry. Yeah, yeah,
It's
sure.
fine. Yeah. So yes, I did face problem for awareness thing. I think the problem that I faced was to convince people that it's worth their time, that it's really going to make a difference, that it's really going to go out and work. It's not just
Mm-hmm.
for the sake, it's just not for the name. So the awareness part was that convincing people that it's true, it's going
Right,
to help, and your contribution matters. Because sometimes people would
right,
just say there are other people doing it and no big deal, many people can do it, but then convincing people that your contribution, every contribution matters. So the awareness part was that.
right.
And in the logistics, again, because it was for a social cause, we had to get things at a very discounted rate, or get in a lot of people to collaborate. So
Mm-hmm.
convincing people, telling people the advantages, telling people that what it would help, how it would pan out, and what is the income outcome, like the input output, like if we are getting so many people, the blood donation thing that's going to happen. So these were some of the issues that I faced.
Great. Thanks so much, Shagutta. I'm very sorry. I just want to apologize because I'm taking it on the phone. I couldn't make out exactly who was speaking, so that's why I thought it was Prachi. My apologies. So thank you for that example. I think that's a perfect example. So when you were volunteering, just going and volunteering, okay, you played one role. When you went and created awareness and spoke to people, you played a second role. And when you started looking at the issues of the cost benefit analysis, input output, you played a third role. So can you tell me which roles are which? Which role do you think it
Which,
was? Which role was
which
a
role?
social worker? Which role was a social worker? Which role was a social activist? And which role was a social entrepreneur?
The social entrepreneur part was the logistic part.
Exactly. Perfect.
Getting
Perfect.
getting
Correct.
the collaborations and getting people on board, planning out. That was
Absolutely.
social entrepreneur. Social activist was the awareness part, wherein you tell people, okay, it's worth it. And
Correct.
social worker was, I think, bridging the two. If
Right.
you see,
And social
bridging
workers,
the two. Uh, yeah, a social worker was like bridging the two and having that whole thing put together by hosting the campaign, and it's like the middle work, wherein you're connecting two things. So, in my opinion,
absolutely.
maybe.
So I think, from just this one example, I really want you to think, because if you all are planning to become social entrepreneurs, you must be very clear that you are not social workers. Because social workers will go and just do what requires to be done, and it is a very important role. But there are certain limitations in achieving certain goals. When you're a social activist, again, very important role, okay, because without advocacy, without bringing people in, how are you ever going to achieve something? But again, it has limitations because it stops at awareness, while a social entrepreneur has to do all of that and more, right? Because they can't just say that, oh, okay, fine, I and this is not about being a for profit or a non profit. Please note, this is even an NGO who is a non-profit can be very entrepreneurial in approach, because it looks at problem solving. You all did problem solving yesterday, right? That's exactly what an entrepreneur has got to do. Go beyond just delivering on a particular task because you've got funding. It is very easy when people give you funding and tell you, okay, now tell us what will you do in this amount, or vice versa, where you say, I can do this, and I need so much money to do it. Great. You're doing social work. But when you become a social entrepreneur, you're constantly weighing input and output. You're constantly weighing return on investment. You're constantly looking at problems and solving them, constantly finding constraints and overcoming them. Does that help you and make you really understand what is required of a social entrepreneur vis-a-vis a social worker or a social activist? And if you have a question, now's your time to ask. Yeah. So I hope I'm going to get questions, huh, Cletus? Others, I'd be feeling very bad.
No, no. Surely, they have a lot of questions too. Yeah, yeah.
Otherwise, I will start talking and talking and talking. I can speak non-stop. I can tell you that much, right? So y'all will get bored. That's the only problem. So it's up to y'all. Either y'all get bored or y'all get interesting, whichever one y'all want. Yeah. So did this kind of help you all understand the difference seriously? Did this help you understand the difference between what is a social worker, a social entrepreneur, and a social activist? Okay. I think they're really
Yes,
waiting to hear my story, Cletus. Should I
yes,
just
yes.
do that?
Perhaps you can. Yeah, and there's some messages in the chat box also.
Okay.
Um, Vidya says I had taken initiatives for adult literacy in UP for women. So Vidya
Okay.
has yes.
Why can I not see my chat?
Maybe possibly because I'll see how I can enable you as a presenter. Then I'll see how that can be done.
Because I cannot see the chat.
Okay, okay. Because you joined in as a guest, I'll see how I can
Okay.
make you part of it. Yeah,
Please.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
All right. Great. So I'm sorry. Then in that case, maybe it becomes a bit difficult if I cannot see the chat to answer. But yeah. So what did she say, Cletus? If you could just repeat that. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So she said I had taken initiatives for adult literacy in UP for women. Yeah.
Right, right. Great, great. Awesome. And I hope the reason why I'm saying this right at the start is because you need to take a decision in your life that if I am a social entrepreneur, then you're not a social worker. Don't expect that just because you'll get funding, that's it. Then what you're being is a social worker, right? And there's nothing wrong. All three are very important roles. So this is not about right or wrong, good or bad, right? This is about taking a decision about what are you going to be and how are you going to make sure you achieve what you set yourself out to do. Because if you have decided to be a social entrepreneur and you assume that the only thing you need to do is make sure you raise funds for your projects, then you're not a social entrepreneur. You're a social worker. And that's also fine, right? That's also fine. But once you start getting onto a social entrepreneurship journey, okay, you will be constantly at this thing as what more can I do? How else can I do this? Right? And that's where it starts moving not just into entrepreneurship, but even innovation, social innovation, because that's what entrepreneurs are. They're problem solvers. They're forever looking at something differently, right? And that's what we need to do. And I think for me, my journey has been about going across all these three roles. I have played all the three roles, right? Where I started more as a volunteer right from my childhood. Professor Cletus is talking about the podcast that I have, and I spoke about this journey, and where really I was so always interested in volunteering, right? I was always a part of social activity, but you know being a part of social activity and volunteering and doing social work is very different from being a social entrepreneur. And when I decided to start my own initiative, okay, and do something full time in the social sector, and that also I must tell you all, okay, from a career that you will be totally bowled over when I tell you that I was part of the diamond, gem and jewelry industry, right? I was heading India operations, okay, for an American iconic brand, GIA, and from that I moved into this. I mean, nobody could believe it, not least of all my managing director when I told. And and I remember her telling me that um, what you call it, that why don't you just hire somebody to run and do whatever you want them to do? And my answer was really simple. Can anybody else run my organization the way I want to do it? And that is another lesson as an entrepreneur. You have a signature because you have a vision. Nobody else can do it for you, right? And you need to have that vision if you really want to make something happen. And so I had that vision, or at least I thought I had a vision, because honestly, a lot of things change when you actually get down to doing things. We all know that, right? Plan A, plan B, plan C, plan Z. Right? So you'll always have backup plans, and you'll always have risk mitigation, but at least you have to have a plan. I mean, it doesn't matter what kind of plan, and it doesn't matter if it's not perfect. It doesn't matter if you have not thought of every detail, but you have to have a vision. And as they say, a vision without a plan is a dream, right? Yeah. And a plan without a vision is just a task, right? So you have to have a vision, you have to have some kind of an idea. And so when I did I mean, I had that vision, and I'd in fact joined them with the saying that I will leave in 1 year because I want to start my own thing, and they couldn't believe it. They thought it, that I was crazy. And that's another thing you'll keep having if you're an entrepreneur. You're of course studying entrepreneurship and then going to do it, so probably would be a little more easier and acceptable. But when you're in the business world and you suddenly say you're going to be a social entrepreneur, people think you're bonkers. Yeah, literally, right? And for me, it was even worse still, because I had just come back from the US, and obviously everybody thought I would leverage my, US experience and create a new career for myself in India. And I went completely off the charts by saying, no, I've decided to move into the social sector full time, right? But also, as an entrepreneur like you are doing right now, learning through a classroom setting, I also realized that even though I was a social worker, I had no idea what was social entrepreneurship about. I had no idea what the social sector was about really in detail, right? And that's why I also decided that let me work somewhere, let me learn something. And that's another lesson I guess I would like to share, that you must be on this continuous path of learning. Believe me, even today I am doing courses. Even today I'm doing not one, two, but multiple courses. Why? Because if you don't do continuous education, you don't continuously keep abreast of what is happening, you cannot ever be innovative enough. I am not saying that, what you call it, being focused on your work is bad. Okay. In life, I find there are very few things that are completely bad or completely good. Everything that is extremes, I think, has something that's wrong with it. So even the worst person in this world, as they say, will have some good in them, and even the best person in this world, as they say, will have some bad in them, right? So therefore there is never a judgment call of saying, is this right or wrong. You just have to feel that this is correct for you. And I think that's the most important thing to learn, right? That if you are comfortable doing it, great, go for it. If you're not comfortable doing it, don't do it, because then you will never do a good job of it. So, like I said, learning has always been something, a part of my life, and I've constantly done it. And so I joined uh, an NGO in Bombay, and yeah, I mean, it was a 80-year-old organization that had actually celebrated their 75th anniversary to two centers when they did their 80th anniversary, which means what? One center in 5 years. And then in 2 more years, they moved to six centers, which is not a bad thing considering they took so long for one. But after I joined and we started putting together a plan, a process, a system, okay, we moved from six centers to 21 centers in a period of 18 months. Now, how did that happen? Right? Because I stopped us working like social workers. We became social entrepreneurs. We designed plans. We created a cookie cutter approach that every center that would open like a franchisee. Not just that, we even got an ISO 9001 certification done. An NGO. I am talking about 15 years ago, not now. Yeah. Of course, that is because I myself I was an ISO auditor. I had done my Six Sigma green belt with KPMG. So obviously I had that background. But what I did was I married my professional skills to my personal passion. And that is what entrepreneurship is about. You need to be passionate about what you want to do and change. You know your theory of change, but you have to use your head as well to make sure that you really can make it happen. Not just a dream, not just a dream. It will be a reality when you combine vision with a plan. And let me tell you something, it's not as though I've achieved it all now. It's not as though I've not made enough of mistakes. It's not as though I've not failed. I have done all that and more. And sometimes I still feel like a failure even today in many ways, right? But that's not the point. The point is that you don't give up. Like Cletus sir said a little earlier, which I mentioned in one of my interviews, you never give up. An entrepreneur does not give up because they are a problem solver. And because they're a problem solver, no matter how many problems come your way, no matter how many constraints you're faced with, you will get up the next morning and feel as strongly about it and find a way to get around it. And so that's how. So therefore, it's not that you'll ever reach a perfection stage or you'll reach this, situation of saying that, oh wow, I've done everything that I had to do. No, but you keep moving because there's so much to be done, unfortunately. Yeah, the world is faced with so many pressing problems that really the social entrepreneurs are really our heroes of today, and we truly need every one of you involved in it. So never give up and keep moving ahead, but keep moving with a proper vision and a proper plan. Right? So that's how I went. I started learning there. I experimented. I was successful in what we were looking to do. And of course, I told them also that I was planning to. Okay, okay. I'm sorry. It seems if you don't put the mask, please, the police start catching you. Okay. Maybe a good time for you all to ask me any questions. Do you think, Cletus, we should ask you that?
Yes, yes. I in the meanwhile, as you're just masking up, as they say, well, there is one question which Teresa has put up in the chat box. I'm sorry,
Okay.
I can't understand the chat box thing. I think is because guest it doesn't allow Teams.
No,
So she asked. Teresa says, can't social workers start their own NGOs too?
yes, absolutely. I think I said that right at the beginning that social entrepreneur is not about for profit or non profit. It is about a mindset. It is about an approach. हाँ? हाथ लगाया ना मैंने हाँ, लगाया. Sorry, my driver is like being very careful. So, um, as I said, it's not about being a for profit or a non profit. You can be perfectly entrepreneurial, okay, even in a non profit environment, right? So please don't mix up the two, which is why I said this. I spoke about these three things, right? How are you going to function? Believe me, there are enough of social entrepreneurs who work like social workers and also work as social activists, right? They've forgotten what really is a social entrepreneur all about. So don't worry about whether it's a for profit or non profit. Those are other considerations. And we ourselves are a hybrid organization now. While we started as a pure for profit organization, we actually had to become a non profit because the law demanded it. Our laws, our Indian CSR laws demanded that you cannot be a for-profit enterprise. You, in order for you to execute any kind of CSR activity, you necessarily have to be a non-profit. So therefore, those are other considerations. Those are legal considerations. Those are policy considerations. So being a social entrepreneur is not defined by the legal or financial status of your initiative. I hope I've answered that question. Yeah.
I think so. Yes. If you students, if you feel that you need some more clarity, you can unmute yourself and ask. Don't feel shy. You can probably
Yes.
just unmute yourself, or you just put up your hand, and I can ask ma'am to allow you to speak. Yeah.
Sure. Sure. Any other question in the meantime, Peter?
So far, no, not yet. But
Okay.
we'll. Yeah, yeah. We
Then,
can go ahead.
then
Yes.
I said, from there, that's what I decided to start my own enterprise. And I was very clear that I wanted to be a social entrepreneur. I did not want to start another NGO at that point in time for two, three reasons. One, because I was focused on women entrepreneurship. And so I was very clear, how can I tell women to be good entrepreneurs if I myself was not one? How could I tell them to be financially sustainable if I also was not one, right? And so, therefore, we said if we have to walk the talk, we ourselves should be a non-profit. I mean, should be a for-profit and not a non-profit. Of course, I think one of the biggest, what you call it, fallacies in the social sector is the thought that a social entrepreneur will be sustainable from day one. I tell you, it's the biggest disservice we do to budding social entrepreneurs. And most social entrepreneurs, will very proudly say, oh, we are very sustainable. We don't believe in charity. We don't believe in funding, But the truth is, all of them have been funded. I don't know of any social entrepreneur who has not in the initial stages taken funding, okay, from someone or the other to support them to get started. Even commercial ventures have seed funding. So why is it that only social entrepreneurs are constantly obsessed with this thing of being sustainable, right? So I think like I said, social entrepreneurs really beat themselves up, put too much of pressure on themselves to find a sustainable business model from day one. Don't do that, please. I myself have been lucky enough to be able to stay without any grants, subsidies, sponsorships, or investor for 12 years. It was only in the pandemic that we started to take funding. And that was by God's grace for many other reasons that we were able to do it on our own, right? But I would never want that pressure on any young budding entrepreneur, honestly. Please understand that there is nothing wrong by getting seed funded. There is nothing wrong by getting initial support from people. But yes, over a period of time, you definitely need to have your business model. You definitely need to have your revenue streams, and you definitely need to be financially viable, right? But don't don't worry about that as a starting point. The other extreme is equally important. Don't get into mission drift. How many of you have heard the word mission drift? Anybody? Anybody knows what is mission drift? You know, I used to teach at NMIMS. So 4 years I taught in core MBA, and 4 years I taught the social entrepreneurship course. And I used to always tell my students that the answers in English, the answers in the question, right? And still we find it difficult to get the answer. Why? Because we're not thinking. So what did I say? Mission drift. So if you understand, you have a mission, right? Obviously, everybody starts their social enterprise with a mission, but ultimately, we tend to drift away from it because we suddenly start realizing as we scale, as we start doing better, as our revenue model starts working, as we get more funding, we suddenly start realizing, oh, it's much easier for me if I'm doing an educational initiative, let's say, right? It's much easier for me to work with lower, maybe income private schools rather than working with BMC schools. I'm just giving an example. Similarly, in healthcare, right? You may have started by thinking I will work with people with who are really from the poorest of the poor. But suddenly you start realizing, oh, there are others also who are capable of paying for me. You may not be that poor, but they also need my help. So maybe it's easier. So what happens is we start drifting towards a category of beneficiaries or your users, as I like to say, for a social entrepreneur, they should be your users, not the original target group that you started with in your mission. And that is a very sad thing. That is a very sad thing. And I hope that none of you ever be in that position, because that would mean that the people you thought of to help, kya ho gaya? Kuch to atak hai. The people you originally thought to support and help will no longer be the ones that you will be focused on. Yeah. So I think these are some things that I have learned along the way. And then, as I said, I got started. We started my organization, um, and in these 12 years we just celebrated our 12th anniversary. We actually कुछ तो अटक गया, निकल गया। Okay. As you can see, life is like this is exactly how an entrepreneur's journey is like. Okay. You'll always have unexpected things and you just got to deal with it, isn't it? This is exactly, you're seeing live motion picture, not just listening, not just listening to me, but actually seeing my life as it's unfolding. Yeah. So, yeah. So, I mean, to go back to, like I said, we just celebrated our 12th anniversary, and it has obviously been a lot of ups and downs, but at the same time very satisfying, because you know that what you're doing is through your own efforts, right? You know what you're doing is helping so many people, and these are not small things. Today our operations span, we have a footprint in 7 countries. In India alone, we've done work in over 24 states. During the pandemic, we reached out. I'm using the word reached out very carefully because everybody talks about impacting life. I'm sorry, it takes a lot of effort, time, and this thing to impact lives. Yeah, so let's not use the word impact so casually, right? So I always say that we managed to reach out to 500,000 people within the first 4 months of the pandemic. We ran a virtual call center, a virtual crisis management center to track migrants as they were walking. We organized buses, right? In fact, before buses, we were helping actually for a program called Jivan Rath, which was done by UNICEF Maharashtra in partnership with them and with other 60 partners called MahaPicoNet, and I would advise you all to really go and read up about that as well, to look at how we could, really support the migrants during their crisis. And we realized that instead of waiting for them to come to us, we should go to them. So we had this whole, a relief on wheels program where we went to wherever the migrants were and supported them with food and footwear, water, ORS, etc., and all that. And then from that we started organizing buses to different places in India. We even managed to get some of them on flights where it was crisis situations where a wife was due with a baby, where someone lost their mother and wanted to reach in time for the funeral. So we've seen life, birth, death, everything, medical cases, exactly. So I think that was really an eye opener to understand how efficiency is so badly missing once disaster strikes. Because everybody's trying to do something and everybody's working with the best of intentions, and yet there can be so much of chaos in that, right? And that's how we got started with UNICEF to create this platform and kind of take it further. So we've really moved, as our organization kept moving ahead. I think we evolved as well, and that's why while you may have a plan A and you may have an initial vision, you must be flexible enough as an entrepreneur to be able to say that what is the real situation, am I doing it right, do I need to change? And please believe me, it's not always the mistake on the ground, because always you'll say, oh, the because of this happened, that's why I failed. Or no, I'm sorry, we make mistakes, I have made mistakes, right? I have failed and I've learned from those failures, and therefore for me they are not failures anymore, because when you learn from them, you are able to come up with even better solutions, right? चल रहा है अभी ठीक चलेगा ना अभी sorry I'm sorry, did somebody want to ask a question?
Well, I think one of them, I think Shagufta, you had something you had put on your camera. You would like to ask a question, or if any others in the group here would like to ask a question, you're most welcome. Yeah, please go ahead. But amazing.
No, ma'am.
Yeah,
No,
go ahead.
ma'am. Actually, I was listening so intensively that I did the camera is connection. So that's on. Amazing work, amazing. Really appreciate the effort, and I'm so happy that I'm getting to know all this. So please share more.
Yeah. Thank you, Shagufta. Really amazing. I agree with her. I mean, it's a real amazing kind of a journey in terms of seeing how really, you've been evolving, and so many beautiful insights that you have been sharing. Actually, one of the things that when you were talking about, see, being sustainable is important, but, you said nothing wrong in getting initial funding. But, as social, like we are College of Social Work. So, as social workers, the first, one of the main important constraints or challenges that we see is that we are so scared that, where will the money come from? Even as social workers, we're struggling. So forget about social entrepreneurs. Like social entrepreneurs, oh my God, we need more money. So in that sense, so what would you say about that? Yeah.
No, I'm not for 1 minute saying money is not important. Of course it is. But please believe me, we're talking of a resource, right? What is money finally? Money is a resource, correct? Which means, can you get that resource in another form? During the pandemic, okay, this year, we raised 15 crores for the second wave. And do you know, we didn't receive a single rupee of it. Not a single rupee. Why? Because we raised it in kind. What we did was
Amazing.
get the commitment. They did the purchase. We organized and found out exactly what the needs were in the different hospitals, what was the requirement, confirmed it with the doctors, worked with the government, public health departments, BMC, all of that, right? We did all the work, but we didn't take the money in our bank account, right? They purchased the items, they looked at all of that, and they organized to deliver. So there are many ways you can solve problems without necessarily having money in your hand. And the second thing, so one is of course resources that can be in cash or in kind. That's number one. Number two is partnerships. There is a lot you can do through partnerships. Again, same thing. We would not take cash in our hand, but if somebody else said, you know what, we can provide you a space, or we will pay for the all the branding and collateral and all. Great, awesome. Why do I need to always say, give me money? I think that's the biggest problem. And I'm sorry that now I'm sounding a little judgmental, but that's the biggest problem in our social sector, and which corporates recognize right away, is that we keep coming up with these proposals. Give us money for this proposal, give us money for this proposal. Have you ever sat with a corporate and said, look, this is my idea, this is what I want to achieve, and I need these things to happen? Now, when you talk this way with a corporate, you never know. The corporate might tell you, okay, I cannot give you funding, but my people will come and paint your entire, what you call it, school, right? My volunteers will come and do all that. My volunteers will donate pens and books and all that for your children, for your students. You will not realize. In fact, just over the weekend, I had gone somewhere and I got an example of this great BMC, what you call it, officer, who on his own started 25 ashram schools. 25, not one, not two, not three, 25 ashram schools without taking a single penny, because somebody would donate mattresses, somebody would donate beds, somebody would donate the bartans. I mean, he didn't take a single rupee. So please, and that is entrepreneurship. That is entrepreneurship, where even if you're a non-profit, right, you understand that these are my constraints and I need to make it still happen. So how do I do it? The problem is you're thinking like a social worker. I need funds to make this happen. That is the difference between a social worker approach and an entrepreneur approach. A social worker will just say, this is my proposal, I need funding for it, then I can do this work. Then I can achieve social impact because I'm a social worker. Nothing wrong with it. Please, I'm again saying this, right? Nothing wrong with it. But if you're going to wait for somebody to give you money to make something happen, then that's fine. But if you want to make sure it happens and make it happen and not wait for it to happen, then you're going to have to find another solution. And you'll have to start thinking like an entrepreneur. I hope I've answered your question, Cutis.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I think that's very rightly said. I mean, we really need to be convinced ourselves and then present what we have in our minds to the a corporate or to the potential persons, and then automatically it happens. I mean, I do agree. I know a lot of examples that have happened in the field. Yeah, so there are many of these struggles. One of these struggles we just said is resources, but sometimes there could be a lot of struggles that could happen within a person. Like say, when you were on your journey of entrepreneurship, what are some of the struggles that you faced as an entrepreneur from within? Like, what was it that was like kind of you know, preventing you from going ahead, and those, those inner conversations that and who was your kind of support? Maybe your friends or your family. I mean, you can share that. Yeah.
No, no, you're absolutely right. It's not a bed of roses. No. If anybody thinks it is, then please stop now only and forget about it, right? It is a lot of ups and downs. It is a lot of times when you are in self doubt. There are a lot of times where you may be confident, but others start, kind of pointing fingers at you or passing remarks or being judgmental about you. So you're going to have all that and more, right? The internal struggles as well as the external struggles. You're going to have both of these. But I think, at the end of the day, and I think I've said this in another interview, is like, do you have your true north? Do you know what is a true north? Do you all know about the compass? You know, the compass has a true north. Yeah. I think you have to have a true north inside you. That compass, your own moral compass, your own, not just only moral, but your entire self, right? You have to have a true north. And if you feel that you are in line with that, as I said earlier also, if you're comfortable, right? If you are comfortable with what you're doing, then even if you're a failure, you will learn from it. Even if you're a failure, I'm repeating this. Even if you're a failure, you will learn from it. Because you know you did your best. You know you put in your best. You know you did it for the right reasons, okay? And you fail. That's fine. Acceptable. As long as you sit, analyze, accept, and move on, right? So you will have those mornings when you don't even feel like getting up. You will have those evenings when all you want to do is perhaps run away and never come the next day back to, your office. Okay. You will have those days when you have somebody sitting in front of you, and honestly, I will say this really publicly, you want to just give that person a slap, literally. You feel so violent when you should not obviously be violent. Okay. And you don't. Okay. But that's the way you feel. But then you realize that is part of the journey. That is part of the learning. That is part of your personal evolution.
I think
I
there's
think
some
we're
very
at the 5 minutes. So, yeah.
yes. Yeah, I think there's some very valuable insights into this, accepting your failures, and that's part of your journey. I really love that because, getting in terms with yourself, that is the most difficult part of the journey. And yeah, so who has been those people who stood by you? I mean, did you have some pillars of support, that, entrepreneurs can look to, as we call it, the ecosystem, or what are those factors that contributed to your journey? Yeah.
I think, of course, family and friends play a very important role in this. There's no two ways about it. Okay. But beyond that, there is what you rightly said is the ecosystem. And today, the ecosystem is far more stronger than in our days, right? So today, there are many people out there who can be your mentor, who can be your advisor, who can be your donor, who can be your supporter. And I'm saying, and those are interchangeable roles. Today, a donor can actually become a mentor, or a mentor can actually become a donor. So don't label people and then keep it like a fixed label. That label is only temporary, right? That person is doing something at that point depending on what your need is. So never hesitate to ask. And I always say this, the biggest challenge of all in any support is taking this first step of asking for it. And we don't ask. It's human nature. We feel awkward, we're scared of rejection, we're so worried that what will people think about us, how will I do this, what will happen next. Sorry. Like I say, that's the differentiator between a social entrepreneur and maybe, the other way. That a social entrepreneur understands that unless you go out and expose yourself and are willing to take risk, taking risk is an essentially entrepreneurial trait, right? You
Yes.
have to be willing to take risk. And risk is not just financial risk, it is reputation risk, it is a personal risk, it is knowledge risk, right? You have to be willing to take that risk. Unfortunately, nobody else can take that first step other than you. Take the first step, make it happen.
Yes. Rightly said, ma'am. Taking the risk is really something that I think many people struggle, in terms of taking that first step. As you said, never hesitate to ask. And I like that, very simple but very profound statements that you have shared, Karen. That's lovely. Yeah. Any students would like to ask any questions? I mean, it would be really lovely because, hearing, yeah, I see a hand going up. Let me just see that. Vidya wants to ask a question. Vidya, please go ahead.
Yeah, actually, I don't have a question, but then, ma'am, as I'm listening to you last 1 hour, I would like to just say that every word that you spoke, was an inspiration to me. And these words, every sentence came from your deep experiences, all the past experiences, and currently what you are doing. I really appreciate you for that, ma'am. What I really like from this session is never to give up. And of course, when I start asking, it shows the simplicity. And then, as a social entrepreneur, not to search only for the sponsorship or funding, but find the ways and means for this funding. It may be cash and kind. And touching point was that you took an initiative during pandemic to arrange the buses, especially for the migrants. That was something to be really appreciated, ma'am, because these were the people were really neglected and were not reached out. And it was really initiative from your side. I really appreciate that, and I would like to be one of that, waiting forward to do to take such steps. And it was a great listening to you. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Vidya, and always welcome. We keep looking for interns and volunteers.
Has come up in the chat box, Karen. Thank you. Who spoke just now? Aishwarya in the chat box says, "Can you please share something about your own organization? What inspired you to get started?"
Okay, we are the last 2 minutes of our talk, but I will try and very quickly say this. So I think two things that I wanted to do. One is, as I said, there are so many great NGOs doing so much of great work, but unfortunately, perhaps not with the extent of professionalism or the extent of systems and processes in place. And so that is what I was looking to do. How could I help NGOs become more efficient? They are effective. They're definitely effective. They get the job done. They impact so many people's lives. But do we do it in the most efficient manner? And I think that was my one thing that I wanted to do. The second thing that I wanted to do was women, right? Because women, I myself have gone through some very, very difficult times in my life. I mean, I know I'm smiling right now, and you must be wondering, like, how can she be talking about difficult times? But believe me, some really life-threatening moments, and I know exactly what it means to be a woman in trouble, right? Or a woman who is unwell and who needs support. And I can just imagine that with all my background, with all my resources that I had, I struggled, right? And if I could struggle with all those privileges that God gifted me, I think, can you imagine what it would be like with for women who did not have that? And so for me, it is that God has gifted me because He wants me to help others, right? And so for me, that is what I looked at and said, can I work with women entrepreneurs and help them to become more economically independent so that they can deal with their lives, right? But I learned very quickly that economic independence is not the silver bullet that we think for women empowerment, and therefore there are a lot of other things you need to do, and that's how we evolved. That's why I said I started with one vision, but I evolved because I was open to learning and be flexible enough to understand that perhaps all my assumptions, thoughts, and plans were not perhaps the right one and perhaps needed to be changed. And so we evolved from entrepreneurship to partnership and then finally citizenship. And so we have this whole model called the PICO world or the PICO net, which is also what we're doing with UNICEF, where we believe that that's the best way to collaborate and multiply your impact. That's our tagline: multiply your impact through partnership, entrepreneurship, and citizenship. So that's how we work with across women's social green issues. So I said it very quickly. And yes, only one last line: because we have a hybrid organization, we try to work on long-term sustainable solutions in the for-profit entrepreneurship IDOBRO, while we work on immediate emergency needs under the non-profit, which is the Rise Infinity Foundation. So we try to work on both short-term immediate solutions, but also on long-term sustainable solutions. Yeah.
Yes, I do hope that has answered your question, Aishwarya. Yeah, so, yeah, she says thank you. Yes, yes. So that's great. I think what I love about what you're just sharing is that how you multiply your impact through partnership, entrepreneurship, and the third point I didn't get you. Uh,
Citizenship.
Citizenship. Okay, okay, great. I mean, each of your statements are so powerful. I think I've written down in the chat box so that students can go back to it and think about what you have just said. because it's so important to share. I mean, to really reflect on what you have spoken about. So I'm sure they will read what I'm writing in the chat box of what you're saying. So
You
many
feel
nuggets.
free. If I could
Yeah.
just maybe suggest, just take only the audio recording of this, no
Yes.
video,
Yes.
but that would be very easy to share even on a WhatsApp and
Yes.
learn.
Yes. Yes. Yes, yes, we'll do that, ma'am. I really so many lovely insights that you have shared. I'm sure the students will love it. So, yeah. Anybody else would like to share anything more? Maybe,
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, Shagufta,
Can
please
I?
go ahead. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, ma'am. So the first thing that I really liked that the perspective that you shared was a very humane perspective and very realistic, not the idealism part. Because when we are at the other side of the table, when we are in bookish knowledge, we think idealism ke impact kar denge life, all those big talks. But actually what happens at the ground that you said, because even I have a kind of a plan, even I'm passionate about women empowerment and specifically the livelihood opportunities. I want to work in that. But as you lightly said, okay, there were hurdles wherein that one silver bullet thing could not work out. So you had to kind of have that flexible approach. So it was really nice to know that how realistically things work, and it was a good perspective. And again, the locus of control wala thing, that catering to needs need not only be about cash, it can be other ways. So that really gave a broader perspective about how we can collaborate and have partnership and cater to needs in many so many ways. It was really nice. It was really nice, and your foundation is doing a very good job. Thank you, ma'am.
yeah,
Thank you so much. Thank you.
yeah. Thank you, Shagufta. I think that's really lovely. Yeah, Vidya says, thank you, ma'am. Your experiences really gave boost to my social entrepreneur person in me. Yeah, so thank you. We also are joined by Sharon. Sharon is, I think you will know Sharon from the Women in Entrepreneurship group.
Ah,
Karen?
so
Sharon
sweet.
has joined
Hi, Cal.
us. Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
so sweet.
Sharon, you want to say
Yes.
something? Anything that?
Yes, yes. So actually, it was very inspiring listening to you because I have taken a very long break from regular work as being a social worker. So I am an alumni of Nirmala Niketan College of Social Work, and after working actively as a social worker for a long period, 10, 13 years, I went into freelancing, then decided to get back, and then I trained as a life coach. And now I am on this path of exploring what I can do in the area, how I could contribute in the field as a social entrepreneur also. So your sharing was definitely very inspiring for me. I think that, a question that Cletus asked about uh, what is it, your inner self-talk? I think I'm still battling with that self-talk of mine because with your, I don't know, I feel when one is younger, one, is more of the mindset and ready to take risks. But as we grow older, then uh, there is a lot of self doubt, a lot of questioning. Should I really be getting into this at this point in time? Can I invest that much of time and energy beyond other resources? So all those challenges, all those things are there in the mind. But I think the more I listen, the more I feel convinced that yes, I'm on the right path and I should continue exploring and moving further with this. So thank you very much, Karen. I really
All
enjoyed
I
your
like listening to your
sharing.
inner voice because the intuition is really truly a very important part of our own self-talk. So all the
True.
very, all the very.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Sharon, for coming and sharing something very lovely. I mean, so students will be able to vibe with that because you being a part of our alumni. And now, let me tell you, students, as I told the others too, that Sharon is now also a consultant on our e-cell and also a mentor. So you can definitely get in touch with her if ever you would like to get some, coaching and forward help linkages. Yes. Thank you, Sharon. Yes. And yeah, is there anybody else that I'm missing out? Anybody else who would like to say a word? before we tie up the loose ends. And um, yeah, so yeah, so there is nothing actually right now. Any students would like to make a comment or ask a question? Uh, we are on time actually, a little bit 5 minutes ahead. So Karen, it was really lovely to have you share with us your journey, and it was really beautiful and insightful. In fact, there were so many beautiful insights that I have made note of personally, to keep coming back and say, okay, this is yeah, I think there's one more person has said, some people have said, yes, Teresa has said social entrepreneurship is new thing for me, really interesting. I have had a lot of basic questions like what is entrepreneurship, but today's session encouraged me to know more about it. Okay, so thank you, Roshni, Teresa. And Subrata says thank you. Yeah, so others too have said thank you, a lot of them. So thank you, ma'am. I mean, taking on that, as I was just saying that your insights have been so beautiful that there is, and what I liked towards the end, what you said, what is it that really inspired you or helped you? I think you spoke about two important things. One thing is about your inner self and also about God, or rather some we would call it a spiritual kind of a foundation. And I love that because for me spirituality holds a very important aspect in one's life journey, because that's where we tap into our inner strength or our inner vision, if you might say. Yeah, so students, I mean, I think that's a beautiful insight which Karen has shared with us. We need to tap into this spiritual path sometimes also to lead us to giving us a clarity and a vision. There's another thing also which I would like to end with and affirm what you have said, ma'am, is that the fact that social entrepreneurship goes much beyond, and I think that is the kind of vision that the students also gave, response to that. Social entrepreneurship does not need to hinge only on finances, but it can also be simple things like how you gave an example of how you reached out during the pandemic. I think that was very inspiring, and I'm sure our students will take home, and these are the lovely take homes that we will really remember you for, and we'd love to interact with you again, Karen, and definitely at other levels where I have my students from the other academic courses. So lovely having you, Sharon, and definitely we'll get in touch. I'm so happy that you are teaching at Nurse NMS, because we can even look at you as coming in and giving us some more insights at that level. Yeah, so thank you, Karen, for making time again. So busy. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's so busy, but yet you made it. Thank you, and best wishes for your journey ahead in life as you take the, yeah. And thank you, students, for really coming on and understanding these perspectives, because this is the foundation which I believe which will take you on in life. Yeah. So thank you all for participating. So we shall end the session. And students, I will get back to you on the planning of the workshops that we have in November. We have one more coming up in December, sorry, in December. And that one will be actually on the 15th of December. So I will keep you posted in the groups. Yeah, students. So 15th of December, mark your calendars. And for those who want a deeper engagement, we have the course of 3 days, which I spoke to Shagufta yesterday about. Okay, so that I will keep you posted about that. So thank you, students, and have a lovely Diwali holidays for the rest. And ma'am, you too. Wish you a good season, Diwali season with your family and friends, and all of you too. Have a lovely evening. Bye bye. God bless.
Thank
Yeah.
you, ma'am. Thank you, sir.
Bye bye. Thank
Thank,
you, everybody.
thank you,
Bye
ma'am.
bye.
Thank
Bye
you,
bye.
sir.
Thank you,
Bye.
ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, sir.
Ma'am.